Well, it's been a 2-year wait, but at long last we have the conclusion to It. No, I'm not gonna go down that path. That joke is so cliche and predictable, I'm not gonna do it. Let's just get through the intro and start the review. Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson here, and this is my review for It, Chapter 2, which is the sequel to 2017's It, and is pretty much an adaptation of the second half of Stephen King's 1,000-page book, It. The movie picks up 27 years after the events of the last movie, where the Losers Club has managed to defeat Pennywise the Dancing Clown, but they made a deal that if It should ever return, they would all come back to Derry and kill it once and for all. Well, 27 years goes by, more people are missing, and sure enough, Mike, who's the only guy to have stayed in Derry, calls up the other members of the Losers Club saying to come back home and deal with it. So with the 2017 movie, that was probably one of the biggest surprises of that year because I've never read Stephen King's It. So I can't really say anything about the book itself, but I really did not like that miniseries with Tim Curry. I mean, Tim Curry was good, but the rest of the miniseries was just... No, I'm not a fan of that miniseries, to be honest. But the movie, I liked a lot. So with the second one, I unfortunately did not get to see this movie early like I did the first one. And so many people that I know who saw it early were saying how terrible it is, like it's unwatchable, one of the worst movies of the year. And there are people that I respect, so I was a little nervous, but I went into this movie with the best of intentions, and I walked out going, that was fine. I mean, it wasn't the first movie, it's not a great movie, but it's decent, it's good. I mean, it has problems, I'll get to those problems in a minute, but I think this movie has a lot more that's good than actually bad. For one thing, Bill Skarsgård once again delivers as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. He's still so scary, he's so creepy, and the very first time he reappears in this movie, I'm just like, no, because he's just so iconic in that role. And in terms of the adult actors playing the older members of the Losers Club, I think they did a pretty good job with the casting, especially with Bill Hader as an older Richie, played by Finn Wolfhard in the last movie and segments of this movie. And Bill Hader's really good here. He manages to be a comic relief while also not being completely useless. He's still very valuable in terms of taking out It, and he is probably the best addition to this cast. I also really like Jessica Chastain as the older version of Beverly. I thought she's good as well. James McAvoy is great as well. But unfortunately, I didn't think a lot of the other characters were that memorable, especially with Mike. Mike is the only member of the Losers Club who stays in Derry, and he has nothing to do. Like, he's probably the least interesting member of the Losers Club. I don't know. They just didn't really give him anything to do. He's mainly there to spit out exposition on how to kill Pennywise, and that's about it. You're going to be hearing that word a lot throughout this review, so get used to it. But even though the other half of the Losers Club aren't really that memorable, I still got a real sense of friendship and chemistry between all of these people. It seems like time never passed for these characters, and even though they're all adults and being played by different actors, you still get that sense of friendship that they established in the very first movie. And I like that. I like that very much. And there's a scene in the beginning of the movie where they're all reunited for the first time, where they're just eating a Chinese dinner, and their camaraderie just works so well. Every one of these cast members, whether the characters were memorable or not, still have good chemistry with each other. And those are the moments that really made this movie for me, whether it's the chemistry and camaraderie between all the characters, or Bill Skarsgård still being creepy as hell. That all being said, there are problems with this movie. The biggest problem you're going to hear from this movie, and the biggest problem that I have with the movie personally, it is way too long. This movie clocks in at 2 hours and 49 minutes, making it an almost 3-hour-long horror movie, and most of that has to deal with the poor pacing in the middle. The middle of the movie mainly consists of the main characters just going through the town of Derry, remembering moments of their childhood, and then there are occasional scares by either something very supernatural, whether it's in the past or in the present, and occasional appearances by Pennywise. And that's another problem with the movie, is that there's nothing really memorable or terrifying in terms of the film's scares. When you watch that first movie, It, and when they show Georgie's death, that's an iconic moment, and it's also scary, just downright unnerving. There's nothing like that in this movie. And after a while, with the middle of the movie just repeating these scenarios over and over again, you're like, okay, we get the point. Just wrap it up. Let's speed this along so we can get to the film's climax. And speaking of that climax, I personally thought it was a mess. Now, it's not unwatchable or anything, or it's not terrible, but it's just not that well filmed. There's a lot of strobe effects going on throughout, so it really is hard to make out what's going on during this film's climax. And also, just like the middle of the movie, the climax just goes on for a little too long. You kind of get the point of what's going on, and there are so many thrilling moments throughout that aren't really that thrilling. And also, there's a lot of terrible CG throughout this movie, and I mean a lot. But once the climax is all taken care of, I actually did like the way the movie ended with its big statement, and when I walked out of the theater, it made me feel good in the end. So for that alone, I would say that this movie is good, but it's not great. What's good about this movie is really good. Bill Hader, Bill Skarsgård, Jessica Chastain, James McAvoy, the dynamic that all the adult losers have with each other, and where the movie ends with its big statement, again, it made me feel good in the end. That being said, there are a lot of problems throughout this movie, some terrible CG, and again, it is just way too long. There is no reason this movie should have been nearly 3 hours long. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. Alexander, you are a goddamn hypocrite. How can you criticize It Chapter 2 for being almost 3 hours long, and yet you give Avengers Endgame a pass for being 3 hours long? Well, I can offer a very simple answer. It Chapter 2 does not have 11 years of stories to wrap up, so with Endgame, it needed to be 3 hours long. It Chapter 2 did not need to be this long. So a lot of the criticisms that I've heard about this movie before seeing it, I mean, they're not wrong, but saying that this movie is terrible or a contender for one of the worst movies of the year, come on, it's not that bad. It is not. I swear, if this ends up on some worst of lists, that's going to irritate me, because It Chapter 2, again, as I said, it's good, but it's not great. And there you go, that's my review for It Chapter 2. And now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Did you end up liking this movie, or do you think it's terrible? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and of course leave a comment. Don't forget to support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.